Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 219 of the podcast. In this episode, we're continuing this series where we're talking all about volunteers and the challenges of leading and recruiting and caring for volunteers during this season. We're kind of replaying these sessions from the volunteer boot camp training that we did with Ministry Boost last year. And today, you're going to hear all about reactivating volunteers from the bench with Andrae Jones, who's done a great job of this at his church. He's repurposed, made different teams for volunteers to serve on. And I know a lot of leaders, whether your church has been meeting in person now for 6 months or 6 weeks, or it still hasn't happened yet and you're planning it, reactivating those volunteers from the bench is important. It's critical. You're going to need them. And so this is going to be a helpful conversation for you to listen to today. And you can get all the links and notes and all that at nickblevins.com/episode 219. From there, you can even get linked to the original boot camp free replay where you can watch videos of this if you want. You can see the Q&A that were the questions that were asked afterwards, as well as get any notes. So before we jump into that real quick, just want to let you know that we have a brand new Easter bundle for sale with Ministry Boost. For $25, you can get 8 resources that you can use to help families celebrate Easter this year when it looks different. So maybe you'll be hosting some kind of virtual event or giving them resources to celebrate at home. All of that is included in a bundle. Just go to ministryboost.org to check that out. Now, let's jump into this conversation where we're going to hear Andrae Jones talk about how to reactivate volunteers from the bench.
What's going on, Kenny, man? I appreciate you guys allowing me to be a part of this. My name is Andrae Jones, and I'm at One Community Church out in Plano, Texas. And so a lot of you are probably like, where is Plano? We are North Dallas, and I'm actually right around the corner from Allison. So we're good friends, and we talk often. And so a little quick thing, I got 2 kiddos, 14 and 12, married to my bride, Randy, for 11 years. And so she helps me in ministry. And ultimately, if there's anything that good comes out of the ministry, she probably, most likely, absolutely had a hand in it. And I just get a chance to just live off of that. And so we're talking about this idea of reactivating volunteers. And so here's what I know. The best teams are the ones who can recruit, who can retain, who can reproduce, and reactivate. And you hear a lot about recruiting, you hear a lot about retaining volunteers, you hear a lot about how do I reproduce leaders, but often we forget about trying to reactivate them. And I think COVID kind of exposed that for us because all of our volunteers just kind of had to forcefully take a break. And so our goal is now to reactivate them to be a part of ministry. We want to make sure that it's not just a pull, like I need you just to use you, but there's an intentionality about it. And so we're going to talk about that. I love sports. And so I had to make a sports illustration there. And so I'm a big Spurs fan. I grew up in San Antonio. And what I love is that like Greg Popovich, he coached there, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, all of them. And what he would do is he would always pull from his bench. And there's one stat that they give, and they let everybody know often, is that how many points did the bench have? And if your bench can come in and score points, and you're more likely to be able to win the game. And so one of the questions I have is, if your church is reopening or is already reopened, have you asked yourself what's going on with your bench? Are you just thinking about, okay, I got to get everything open, all these statistics, my senior pastor's coming down on me. Like, do we know what's actively happening with our bench? And I think one thing that you'll see is that if you've been intentional over this time, that you'll already see that people are kind of geared up, they're kind of ready, they're engaged. But if we haven't been connected, and what we're doing now is we're coming back for the very first time, and they'll feel that and they'll know that. And you've had that happen to you before. And so we don't want that to happen. And so we've got to be intentional about the people that are on our bench. And often when we hear the word bench, we think of like a B team or a C team or even just a D team, water boy, whatever it may be. But that's not the case when it comes to ministry. We believe this thing that everybody is on a mission from God. And so whether you are the coach, the lead, the staff person, and whether you just said, hey, I need a break in this season, you're all on a mission from God. And so we want to make sure that we're intentional with them and reactivating and engaging them and shepherding them and just loving them. Because here's what we realized is that COVID, reactivating volunteers isn't a COVID thing. It's a daily thing. And here's what I saw, that COVID exposed our need to love people, whether they're in the game or not. And so if you saw yourself calling them, loving on them, engaging them, whether it was pre-COVID or even now. And so years from now, reactivating volunteers will still be a thing, because I guarantee you've heard somebody once come to you and say, hey, I just need a break. I just need some time off, or I'm thinking about stepping back. And when you hear those questions, sometimes it can hurt. Sometimes you're intentional, but ultimately what you're doing is you're shifting that person to the bench, and now we're calling them off the bench. And so we often don't hear about the bench players, but here's what I need you to think about this is your bench a drain or a fountain? Is it a drain or a fountain? When people go to the bench, are they gone forever? Or are they a fountain where they have the opportunity to refresh, revitalize, and then come back and be a part of ministry? Another thing is, like, do your people even know that they're still on the team? We've called some people and we've had some connection with people, and what we've heard is that they didn't even know we reopened. Some of them didn't even know that there were volunteer opportunities, and they just assumed that, you know what, they don't need me. And we don't want that to happen, because everybody who's on the team ultimately wins that championship. And so we want our teams to be a part of this and help us to encourage, but you've got to know who's on your bench and really ask that question. Is it a drain or is it a fountain? Are people just sitting there right now feeling like they're disconnected or disengaged? Nobody wants me. Or are they seeing that this is the opportunity for me to step into what God has called me to do? I've been here, but now I get a chance to take this next step. And so we want to ensure that we're reactivating and we're calling them to something great. And so here's a little bit of what we did. COVID happened, everything shut down right before Easter. We all had to scramble. We all had to create these digital experiences. And so what we did is we didn't just do a mass call and say, hey, everybody come. We kind of polled our people. We said, hey, here's some opportunities for you to get engaged. While this season, we're unsure. And so we let everybody know we don't know what's going on. And that's like the funniest thing as a leader, to tell somebody like you don't know what's going on. But that's what we told them. But we said, here are some opportunities if you want to stay engaged. We told them that they can be it can be on our digital care team, where they can just call people, love on them, and shepherd them. We said that they can be an online tutor, because we saw a need that if people were hurting right now, that our students were at home, if they needed help, then tutoring was an opportunity. Give an hour or two a week, similar if you served on the weekend, and plug in. We launched virtual small groups, and so we kept people in the game, but then we offered them to different areas. And so virtual small groups are happening on Sunday, and they're still happening right now, in addition to our in-person services, because I didn't say it earlier, but we've been in 2 weeks now. It's been amazing. It's been crazy, all the above there. And then we also invited people to be on our digital content team, where they would help us come up with the scripts. They would help us record, because we're doing digital content each and every week. And so how do we do this? Number one is it starts with you as the leader, which means that we have to treat this like a startup. Everything that used to be, some of it's still there, but you're really just trying to ramp back up. The month prior to this, we literally had to figure out how to relaunch our campus, but in addition, continue to have the physical or the digital aspects happening. And so what do? We asked a couple of questions. We said, from our congregation, we wanted to figure out who's in, who's on the fence, who's ready for more, who wants to shift. Maybe kids ministry in this season isn't for you, and we want to get you connected to another ministry. Now, I know you're probably thinking like, why would I want to lose volunteers? We've got to remember it's about the Big C Church. It's not just about your ministry. And when you build those partnerships with ministries, then they'll do the same for you, because I've had ministries send me volunteers because they're like, hey, this person really, really wants to get connected with kids or with students. And then you got to also realize who's on the bench there that says, hey, I'm not ready now. I love what Allison said. And so we did that as well. We created a roster with every volunteer, every leader, every person who wanted to serve, and every person who hasn't served. And we just started calling them. And it wasn't a blanket, hey, come serve with me right now. It was simply a, hey, how are you doing? And how can we be praying for you? And in some of those surveys, it was the same questions. In this season, how can we be praying for you? If there is a digital option, would you be interested in that? Or would you like to wait? And none of it made them feel pressured, but all of it just said, hey, we're here for you right now. If you want to take that next step, please do. And here's how to do it. Because here's what we don't want to do. We don't want people to feel bad for not coming back to serve. You don't want to guilt people in, because then it feels like you're just taking from them. And in this current season, in all honesty, you need them more than they need you. And so we don't want to go out there and say, you must be here, because the world is so consumeristic right now to where they can get whatever they want. And so the hope and prayer is that when they come to serve with you, that they're better, that they're growing, that their relationship is Christ better, that they're looking more like him. And so daily, you've got to have these connections with people. Daily, you've got to be intentional with them. And so it's not just a one-time job to reactivate volunteers. It's a daily thing. And I'm going to tell you, if you haven't felt it right now, you're going to hustle harder than you've ever hustled before, because each and every day you're trying to have these conversations. You're trying to connect. You're trying to shepherd. You're trying to lead. And so your job is to treat it like a startup. The second thing is you want to win the heart before asking for the hand. And so I'm against the mass message that, hey, guys, if you want to be here, you must be here, all that. I really believe in just the individual ask. And so how can I get in front of them? How can I go where they are? How can I connect with them and make sure that it's genuine? And so what you got to do is you got to go where they are. Zoom is actually kind of your friend right now, because what we've seen is that people are at home. And so what we've encouraged our team to do is we set a goal. We set a goal that we're going to Zoom daily with our team, with our congregation, with our parents. And the goal is 5 people a day. Now, why would we do that? Because we want to go where they are. And we're just saying, hey, if you're at home right now, I would just love to just connect with you. I would love to just talk with you. I would love to just pray with you. And if your kids are in the background, that's fine. If work's going on, I literally had a lady take a Zoom from work. And then what I did is I had an opportunity just to pray for her. And guess what? This week, she emailed in and she said, you know what? I see the need. I'll serve weekly during the season because I see that there is a need. Well, that didn't happen because I'm awesome or anything. That happened because we spent time trying to win the heart before the ask. And so I'd love you to set a goal. How many people are you going to connect with daily? How many people are you going to pour into? How many people are going to know your heart and your vision because you took the time to connect with them? And so then you got to ask the question, like, what do I do with my volunteers? So you can repurpose them, you can re-engage them, you can reproduce them. So if you have a great volunteer who's a leader, we'll invite them to leadership opportunities so that other people can see that, and then they can also help you scale the ministry. You can revive them. You're going to talk to some people who are like, you know what? Life has just been crazy. Home is crazy. Kids are crazy. Work is crazy. Everything is crazy. And in this season, it's your opportunity to just shepherd and just to love them. And then you can also realign them. Maybe it's a time for somebody to make a shift. Maybe it's an opportunity for somebody to step into another role. But as you're reactivating, that's your responsibility. And next one is, I want you to tell stories and tell the right stories. And so since our 2 weeks, every week what I've done is I've taken pictures and I just want to show our team what serving in person looks like. I want to show them what digital ministry looks like, because they've got a perspective of what ministry looks like, and we want to show them what it actually is. And so, yeah, there's social distancing. Yeah, there's masks, but here's what's happening. Man, kids are worshiping. Parents are having a blast. The digital side is creating 3 videos a week. And so we want you to see that. So we want to be able to tell the story so that as they see the story, our current volunteers can reshare that story. But then new volunteers may see that and say, you know what? I want to be a part of that. But the whole goal is just to communicate regularly to the team so that they can see what's happening in ministry. Because you don't want the person who's not ready to come back to say, you know what? I don't even know what's going on. I can't even celebrate this. And so help them see the wins, help them be encouraged, and share those stories weekly so that they get an opportunity to be a part of that. And so as you're reactivating volunteers, remember, it's a daily thing. Remember, you got to ask yourself a question. Is your bench a drain or a fountain? And I want to leave you just with a few questions that you can ask. Are people returning to the same or something new? Like in this time, if you still got some time, like what's going to be different? What's going to excite them? Who's in my pool? I'm telling you, print out an entire roster, have it there visibly so that you can see, here's the time that I called them, here's the time that I messaged them, here's the prayer request so that I know this. Ask yourself, who are you praying for? Like, what's the role? What's the volunteer that you need that you're asking God, that God, if you would just fill this role, man, ministry would be so much easier. Ministry would be so much better. That person would have an opportunity to take their next step. Who are you praying for? What areas must you improve? Because remember, it starts with you. And then who are you meeting with weekly and who are you developing? Because as you reactivate these people, you're giving them an opportunity to take that next step. You're giving them an opportunity to be on a mission from God. And so I just want you to know, we're pumped. Like I said, we've been 2 weeks into this. We've had some great success stories and people doing digital, and we love that. And people also coming back in person. But every day we're grinding, every day we're hustling, every day we're praying, and we're just trying to reactivate people so that they all get a chance to win, that they all get a chance to be a part of this mission. And it doesn't matter, like, whether you have a whole lot of volunteers, whether you have a little bit of volunteers, the strength and the health of your bench will determine the trajectory of your ministry. And so we've got to be intentional with it and help it grow. And so I appreciate you for the time. I pray that each and every one of you would connect, that you would grow, and that God would just do some amazing things as you re-engage, reactivate those volunteers. And if you've already reopened, continue. If you're preparing, you've got a little more time. So just be intentional, man. Thank you guys so much for the time.
Andrae has led so well through this pandemic, at least from my perspective, from afar, from the conversations we've had and the things I know they've been doing at their church. And so I'm glad you got to hear from him and learn from him a little bit. And a few of the action items I thought of coming out of that conversation: one, rethink roles like he did, with virtual and in person. Some people ready for in person, some not, both attenders and volunteers. What are some roles that you need to add or change or adapt? Like, rethink it if we're going to be in person and digital, especially for the future, not just for a certain season. What would that look like? What are some new roles that may have to be created? And then as you go to activate volunteers and recruit volunteers, go to where they are. He talked about that. Is it Zoom? Maybe you need to do some things on Zoom, which I know a lot of people are done with Zoom and tired of that. But if that's where they are, if that's how you can reach people in the season where some folks aren't going to be in person, how can you go there? Or maybe it's just phone calls and text and things like that. And then the last step is to make that individual ask, where he talked about fight for the heart, right? Before you ask for their hand, before you ask for their help. We're wrapping up the Volunteer Boost 28-day challenge to recruit volunteers with Ministry Boost. And this is one of the key things that we teach, that this is a pastoral conversation. When you meet one-on-one with somebody to recruit them to volunteer, at first, it's a pastoral conversation. How can I help you take the next best step in your faith? Then it might be about recruiting, maybe, depending on what is their best next step. And he's talking about the same thing here, and I love that. So think about one person you can ask, but fight for the heart first. Make it a pastoral conversation. Again, you can get all the links and notes at nickblevins.com/episode 219. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. We're going to be back again in the next episode with talking about reimagining your volunteer team. So we did a little bit of that. Andrae talked a little bit about that. We're going to hear about more of that from Chris Sasser in the next episode. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. And I hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you next time on the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.